Welcome to growthtofreedom.com, the show that brings you inspiration, transformation, and leadership. We're helping you connect the dots, see the blind spots, and get unstuck so you can go out and generate more leads, more sales, more profits. More importantly, so you can go out and have a bigger reach, a bigger impact, and make a bigger contribution. Welcome to growthtofreedom.com, the show that brings you inspiration, transformation, and leadership. Helping you connect the dots, see the blind spots, and get unstuck so you can go out there and create more growth, create more sales, create more profits, and more importantly, so you can go out there and have a bigger impact, a bigger reach, and make a bigger contribution. Is that what you want? Well, if that's what you want, then today is your lucky day. Today is a very special day. Let me ask you this. How would you like to have 9 times more impact in what you do with every single move you make? How would you like to learn some of the key decisions or strategies so that you can get more access to one-to-many instead of one-to-one? Or how would you like to know what the buyer's pyramid is and why people are saying no to you potentially, and what you can do immediately, literally today, to be able to get them to say, yes, I want to know more of that. And more importantly than I want to do business with you right now. Our guest expert today is Amanda Holmes. She is the CEO of Chet Holmes International. She has been working side by side in the organization since, I believe, 24 years old. And her father wrote this amazing book that has been a handbook for some of the most successful people in the world building and growing businesses. And she has carried that message forward after her dad suddenly had passed away many years ago, and has been carrying that legacy, that torch, and making an even bigger impact. How cool is that, right? Well, guess what? We are going to talk about some of the core principles of the ultimate sales machine and a whole lot more. Amanda, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, Dan.
Me too. I'm so glad you're here as well. And so we're going to dive right into it. I mean, you've gotten a chance to see this growing up, like teenager in your 20s, and now carrying your dad's mission forward. And now it's your mission to transform people's lives, to go out there and start a university of self-realization, to be able to help people understand that, let's have a wellness and health plan, not a sick plan, and all the amazing charity work that you do. Plus, you've got a new book coming out here. I mean, what are you doing in your spare time? I just have to ask.
I hear that you sleep when you die. I'm not quite sure. No, it's been busy and very exciting. Very exciting.
Yeah. So speaking of exciting, as you've seen, all kinds of perspectives with thousands and hundreds of thousands of businesses and companies, what do you see, Amanda, are some of the biggest mistakes that most people make today as they're looking to grow their business or make a bigger impact and more?
Biggest mistakes. Well, so I also run a research firm. And according to research, there's 3 reasons why businesses fail usually. It chalks up to owner incompetency, which is hard for every CEO to hear. Lack of money, right? They run out of budget, and the inability to innovate. And this is also true when we look at what are the top priorities of businesses in 2022, this year. A study by Intuit just came out saying that generating more online sales is a crucial priority, especially because of COVID, right? Before COVID, it would take on average 5 to 7 years for a business to get online with their marketing and sales techniques. Post-COVID, it takes on average 1.5 years. So crazy how an entire innovation happened globally in such a short period of time. But now the question is, how are we optimizing it? Is it really even working, right? So now we have it. And the second priority is, how do we improve those marketing results?
And speaking of marketing results, I mean, all the way back from when I got touched by this incredible book, I believe it was 2008, 2009 range, in the work that your dad was doing out there. Research. You just brought up research. Talk about the value of research and how research can transform, as you see it, someone's business and turn them from maybe an unwelcome, someone's skeptical, someone's uncertain, to, wow, you are the definitive expert, because it changes everything when you do it right.
Absolutely. So my father had a beautiful quote: market data is always more motivational than product data. So when you talk about your product, it's only so interesting. It can only go so far. I'll give you an example. We have the most wonderful children's dentist in Southern California, 4 out of 5. So I'll give you a product data example. 4 out of 5 children in San Diego go to this dentist. So that's product data. People say, oh, that's nice. But a piece of market data that they use that he got press around all of the nation for was, and we did this research for him, you are 9 times more likely to die of COVID if you have gum disease, and 1 in every 2 people has gum disease. So one of the most crucial things that you can do to protect yourself against COVID is brushing your teeth for 2 minutes twice a day and flossing. Is that not just so, okay, right? So we can break down here what just happened, right? I grabbed them with a great global pain. That hook is so fascinating, right? It kind of just leaves you at the, what? Is that real, right? It sets me up as an expert instantaneously. Wow, that was really valuable. That hit home, and I can take action on it too. So I became the expert in 15 seconds flat. And now we've opened the dialogue to have more of a conversation. He ended up, he got like $400,000 worth of press across the nation as the #1 key person that everybody needed to go to when they shut down dentists. It was fascinating. He's coming out with a book later this or next month, If Your Mouth Could Talk. Oh, so it'll be out when this comes out. If Your Mouth Could Talk. Fascinating. But that's right. We normally just start with how great we are. Oh, I do this. This is what I do. This is why I'm so amazing. This is, as opposed to what do our prospects need to know? What would be of interest to them? What would grab them and stop them in their whatever they're doing?
And that's a different level of thinking, isn't it, Amanda? A lot of people get to the surface level or focus on tactics. This is really a deep, deep strategy to really know your clients. What are the questions they ask? And even deeper, what should they ask that they haven't thought of yet? Speak to that a little bit.
Oh, wow. Well, if we think about, so when my father first came out with that book 15 years ago, the average company would be on 7 different marketing mediums. Today, we're at 15 different marketing mediums on average. So we're doing double the amount of work. We're trying to compete with 3.8 billion social media users. We have 3.8 billion that weren't there 15 years ago. So how are we grabbing that attention when the clutter factor is so absurd, right? We really have to get into the minds of what our prospects, what grabs their attention. And you have to do it. Our attention span is half what it was 10 years ago. It's now the equivalent of a goldfish. We are the equivalent of a goldfish, 3. Although I do find it fascinating that the average podcast listener will listen on average 43 minutes, which for an attention deficit society, every single business owner should have a podcast. After I saw that, I started a podcast within 60 days because I just thought, well, that makes sense. But speaking to this, so how does the human mind take in information and retain it so that we can create that top of mind awareness, right? The whole point of marketing is to create that top of mind awareness so that they come to you. So there's 2 things that I'll back this up with, and then I'm curious for yours because you are such a wealth of knowledge here. So one is we think in stories. For centuries, we've thought in stories. That's how we carried on information. You might forget what the to-dos are in your meeting that you had with your staff, but you go home and you watch a show and you'll remember the whole plot line, right? Because we think in stories. But then the story can be backed and validated by market data because as a society, we trust science. So why not blend the 2 of the story with market data to make you, so whether they're left-brained, right-brained, logical, emotional, it covers all bases.
That is so good. And, at the end of the day, which you guys have been teaching for years, you've got to build rapport. You've got to build a high level of trust. You've got to build a level of respect in that prospect. And one of the faster ways to do that is through utilizing good or great marketing data, right? Now, just to kind of pivot gears, you talked about 9 times more impact from every move you make, which is what we led with for today's episode. Speak to that a little bit. How can someone literally use frameworks from the ultimate sales machine to 9 times their impact with every move?
Absolutely. So imagine that you are in a stadium full of your potential prospects, and we gave the mic, right? So someone's in the audience, Mike is in the audience, and we're giving him a mic. What would be the title of your talk? What could you talk about that would actually keep people in their seats, willing to listen to what you have to say? Now, 15 years ago, this was just such a novel concept that you would actually, maybe I should pause there and say majority of businesses, there's kind of this divide that's happening where you have these online businesses that understand the value of education. So more over the last 10 years, I've watched a room, and also so many of them have read The Ultimate Sales Machine now. They're trained on it. They know to come out of the gates with something that is intriguing to their prospects, that educates them, that grabs their attention. But then I also have companies that are much more set in their ways of, I'm going to talk about me.
Right.
Right. So I've been in business for X number of years. I'm the best. I do great. Me. So everybody that's listening right now, if you have a pen and paper, this is great to draw out. So if you drew a pyramid, so you draw a pyramid and then draw a little line at 3% of that pyramid and write 3%. Yes, we're doing it together. Okay. So 3% is in the buying now category. So if you made a whole 100 cold calls, right, 3% would be interested. If you put a post on social, 3% of those that see it would be interested. Okay. Now we get to 7%. So you do another line at 7%. That means that they're open. They're open to potentially, they're doing research about possibly buying, but they're not in the buying now category yet. Then the remainder of this entire buyer's pyramid, this is the mind blow right here. So do 2 more lines so that you have 3 sections. So 30% aren't thinking about your product. It's just not in their periphery, right? The next 30% think that they're not interested. They have an opinion about what you do. And then the last 30% are definitely not interested, a hard no. So when you look at that, I'm going to test you on your math, Dan. So what percentage of the buyer's pyramid are not interested in your product or service?
Well, it would seem that 90%.
You'd be surprised how many presentations that I've been doing lately, keynotes, where they just don't even know what that number is. I'm like, are you paying attention to me right now?
That's
because
right.
I keep asking you questions, because that was a pretty simple one. It's pretty funny. But yes, 90%. So we're missing out on 90% of the prospects if we're not educating them. So I'll give an example of this. So we had a high-end client out of Dubai. They sold high-end real estate. So their average, they were selling to Fortune 500 CEOs, $3 million vacation homes in Dubai. So second $3 million vacation home. And so the 3% of Fortune 500 CEOs that they could actually get a hold of, it was a pretty small amount of people that they had to reach. Now, their salespeople were going out saying, we'd love to talk to you about our ocean views and our granite countertops and how beautiful this place is. And it was very hard to get sales that way. So we changed their approach. We did some research on Fortune 500 CEOs, and we came back with why wealthy CEOs are at risk for heart disease, diabetes, and premature death, and what you can do about it. It was shocking. When we first showed this to the sales reps, they're like, why are we talking about diabetes? We sell luxury places, right? It was so bizarre. It was so bizarre. It took such a shift for a tactical salesperson that all they care about is, I just want to sell. No, if we were following how many strategic objectives can we implement in one tactic? Can we build up their trust? Can they see us as the only expert in the field? Do they look to us to be able to refer other business because we did such a great job? Did you feel that they brought such great expertise, right? There's so many different strategic objectives that can be accomplished. So we do this education, and they were 17 million, then they dropped down to 0, and there was a complete market blackout for an entire year. They didn't sell one condo. And then they got what we call it a core story. So that messaging. Yeah. So they got their core story. We deployed it over the year. Deborah Bringleson was the consultant on that. And they generated $602 million in 12 months.
Wow. Wow. Now, as you're listening right now, or you're watching right now, what would happen for you if, number one, you started to really understand the value of data, market data, not product data or service data, but your market data, focus on your clients to solve the problems that they've got and speak to their problems more than yours up front. Number three, what would happen for you if you developed a better core story, right? Because if you had the ability to have Amanda put you in that stadium, hand over the mic with, call it University of Michigan, 110,000 people every Saturday during football season, and you're able to give your hot topic, are you going to connect with 110,000 people and have a mad rush of people wanting to get that market data that only you have as the trusted expert? And what's it costing you if you don't, right? What's it costing you if you don't, especially when you consider that 90% of people are not really thinking about you or your product or taking action unless you connect with them. So Amanda, speaking of which, you shared a quick story. You said you worked with a client in 2 weeks. They grew by 17 million, if I'm not mistaken.
12 million.
12 million. 12 million. I mean,
12 million in 2 weeks.
Speak to that a little bit. It sounds too good to be true. So,
oh my gosh, it was such a great experience. So, we work with fairly bigger companies when we're building out a core story for you. And it wasn't until recently that I innovated that process to make it simple and easy for smaller businesses to consume what we do for Fortune 500 clients. And so we created this boot camp, and Troy Averly had gone through it. And I have these recordings of me actually calling him out in the middle of trainings going, Troy, are you okay? You look like you're confused. And he's like, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. But you could tell he looked like something wasn't really making sense. And he was looking fairly frustrated. And it's a 4-week boot camp. So in the 3rd week, some light bulb hit in his head and he came back. So I did 2 days a week. On the 2nd day, he came back to the same session. He said, Amanda, I closed $700,000. And I went, no way. That's amazing. How did you do it? And he's like, and it was somebody that wasn't interested in my product at all. It was the 90% that wasn't interested. I'm like, no, that's great. I want to hear more. And before we could even meet, 3 days later, he's like, Amanda, I generated $248,000. I'm like, what are you doing? This is awesome. And by the 2 weeks after the boot camp, he had already generated 12 million. And what he was doing, so he sells John Deere equipment, tractors and such. So their average sale is, a couple $100,000, but he led with an education of here are the 5 things that every farmer should know that's losing profits on your farm. And I'd like to share this with you. We've done some market data. We've done some research. I can provide that to you in a very short period of time. Could I come and meet you on it? And he got yeses to all these people that weren't interested in getting a tractor, right? Or any John Deere equipment. After that education, they said, wow, I really want to hear more. Can you come back to us with more information? And his average deal size, he closed it with 4 clients. 4 clients generated him $12 million in 2 weeks.
That's amazing. And there's 2 things that stand out in that story for me. And as you're listening, I don't know if you feel this, but it's the market data and the core story, right? So speak to that a little bit, Amanda. How can someone who's watching or listening right now get started with really looking to implement better market data, number one? and or unique market data that really is going to grab their audience's attention? Like, what are the steps that someone might take? And two, how does someone get started with building an even better core story?
Okay, next step. I do have to say that with Troy, really quickly, just to put an exclamation point on this, the average salesperson at John Deere sells $8 million in a year. So he made that quota in 2 weeks. Okay, I'm done.
Amazing.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Fine. So the first step, I would say, if you haven't.
Hold on one second. As you're listening or watching right now, just think about that. So let's say you're a rep, that you've been doing your thing, or you're building your business and you've kind of had a rhythm, and maybe you're growing 20%, 30% a year, so you get to 8 million in a year or 10 million in a year. Right. And then you get a couple new strategies that you can implement around a core story, better market data, and you go get those in place. And you do 12 million in 2 weeks. How does that change the game for you in your life, your business, your family, your team, your growth curve? Now, some companies, truthfully, will probably implode because they can't handle that kind of growth. But ideally, you also have a good fulfillment system set up, or good systems to support
then
that.
You have a better problem. Then you have
it's a good problem to have, for sure.
Yeah. New problem to have. Yes.
That's right. That's right. So, Amanda, break it down for her. What are a couple key steps someone can do? Obviously, we don't have time to go through all of it. That's why you have the different training and resources that you do.
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, if you haven't read The Ultimate Sales Machine, mine looks a little bit more tattered than yours. It goes with me everywhere.
Yes.
The difference. But I would say first and foremost, chapter 4 is free from that book. And it's a chapter that changes people's lives. And that explains the strategist versus the tactician, which is really where this comes down to, because it's not just about market data. Market data, it's all over the internet. People always ask, Amanda, where is the market data? If you just tell me where it is, I will find it. I'm like, I hate to break it to you, my friend, but it's not on some special Google site, right? It's not in a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. It's about strategy. And when you understand the strategy and what you're trying, and the objectives that you're trying to fulfill on, then the whole message is crafted. So chapter 4 is the best first place to go. And you don't have to even pay for that, right? It's free. Or you can get the book, which is also a very small investment in comparison. It's now been voted in the top 10 most recommended marketing and sales books of all time. So it did take me 3 years to write the new edition, which comes out in August, which will be the 10-year honoring of my father's passing. So it'll come out then. But next step after that, I do have a video training on that. If you go to howtodoublesales.com, it will ask you 5 questions to determine what's the biggest thing holding you back from doubling your sales in the next 12 months. And then it will give you which training you need the most, which one of them, eventually you'll get to the core story one as well, with more case studies and more explanation and visuals that help you break it all down.
So I'd encourage you to go right now, right? First of all, like, what would happen for you if you doubled your sales? Right. So Amanda's making a resource available to you that's very easy to get to. So go to howtodoublesales.com. That's howtodoublesales.com. Go there, take advantage of the resource. In addition, I want to encourage you to go get this book. This book is a game changer, a life changer. And I've met so many people over the years who've been inspired by Amanda and Chet's work over the years, their company's work. So go get the book. You can find it in all kinds of places. It's not that difficult. You can also go to Chet Holmes International, Google it. It's very easy. Go on Amazon. But again, go to howtodoublesales.com. And I should ask you, Amanda, like, where do you prefer, like, if someone is really connecting and going, wow, first of all, her energy is amazing, right? It's so great to meet a strong female, founder, CEO, helping other people the way that Amanda and their company are. If they want to connect with you, what's the best place to go for people to learn more about you and what you're up to?
I think if you want to say hello, I'm most on Instagram. And Amanda Holmes is taken there. So I had to take my salsa name, which is Amandita Holmes.
Amandita.
Yes. Darn the Amanda Holmes that doesn't account and won't reply back to me.
So I'd encourage you, go to IG, go to Instagram, connect with Amanda at Amanda.
I'm everywhere anyways. If you're on
and go, I mean, like, it's pretty simple. Go to howtodoublesales.com. Go to howtodoublesales.com. You'll get access to a bunch of amazing resources they're making available, customized to where you are right now in your business journey, right? Whether you're small or emerging or, high growth, hyper growth, or, you want to go public. They've worked with companies of all sizes, shapes, and seasons. So go to howtodoublesales.com and make sure you get this book, and then get in line for Amanda's new book coming up. Now, I'm curious, Amanda, as we kind of wind this down, what's something I should have asked you that, in our short time together that I didn't get a chance to ask you so far?
When you ask me that, my initial reaction is, I want to hear so much about you, Dan. So you'll please come on to my podcast. I would love that if you would grace us with your presence. And,
thank you. Yes.
And we can do the same. That would be my only, I didn't get to hear more about Dan.
Well, that's an easy yes. So we'll get that done. We'll get that in the schedule for sure. Okay. Thank you. Probably know, but I'd love to hear your view on it. Who's the mentor that's had the biggest influence on you, and why?
That's interesting. You say you probably know. I mean, my father is very important in my life, even past his passing, right? That's obviously carrying on that torch. Another person that's been extremely influential to me, I study under an Indian saint. Her formal title is Sarvalokama, Her Holiness Shri 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 1008 Guruji Punamji. I just call her Guruji. It's a long title, but you must say it in formality because she deserves the respect. And she's over the last 10 years has really been the reason why I was able to carry on my father's legacy, because it shouldn't have happened. We shouldn't be around right now. It's an utter miracle. I was 24 years old. My father never gave me any formal training in what the business was, other than just being a sponge of him, living around him, right? He never sat me down and said, hey, Amanda, these are the companies I have. These are the divisions. These are the people that run those divisions. This is how I feel about the company. This is where I want it to go. I got none of that. I had to learn it reading his emails in the middle of the night while I'm sobbing, because I just don't understand what's going on. And I don't understand why I'm 24 as a singer-songwriter trying to figure this out. It shouldn't be my responsibility. It shouldn't have been. That was the feeling when I first took over the company. So to look now 10 years later and go, wow, I can't believe we made it through all of that. That's a whole nother story in itself of like the first week, 2 years, it took me to find different CEOs, and I would find different C-suites and hiring and firing and just trying to fill the void of my father. And I finally stepped in, and like within the first week, we were switching CRM systems, and my staff was like, we've spent $500,000 on Salesforce. And I'd like to know, Amanda, do you think that we should continue with it? I'm thinking maybe we should stop. I'm like, what's a CRM system? Right. The next day, my head of operations goes, Amanda, our accounts have gotten frozen and the merchant services is withholding the ability to pay your hundreds of staff. What would you like to do? And I'm like, well, what's a merchant servicer? It's just the insanity that I've experienced over the last couple of years. And I really hold that to two aspects, right? One is my father has this proven playbook, and I just followed it. I studied it. I read it every day. I watched the videos every day. I continue to do that because to master something takes a lot of practice. And then the second thing was understanding me, getting in my head, getting in alignment with myself, understanding who I am, and understanding who my father is, and being able to respect him, but then honor the fact that I'm a different person. And so if I'm carrying on that legacy, it needs to look a certain way to make me feel fulfilled and full. And that's different, and that's okay. So a lot of learning from both of them.
That's there's so many layers of wisdom there. So I'm curious, what would you say has been the toughest part for you?
Like a moment or the
in the transition, like if you could think back to those couple years where it was probably helter skelter, you're thrown into this fire, and there's chaos going all around you, right? It's like probably felt, I don't know what it felt like for you, but kind of the way you describe it, like I can envision a 9-alarm fire that you're running in and just doing like, I'm curious what your take would be for you. What was the toughest part and what'd you learn from it?
Well, for the first several years, I had like 8 figures worth of lawsuits and things over my head and liabilities that I was trying to solve, while also trying to learn the business, while also trying to handle the grief of losing my father and trying to keep my family afloat. So that was rather stressful, and seeing how people react when people die. People get very strange and they get very aggressive. And when they see money, they attack. And I went from being very sheltered in the sense that my father was bigger than life and nobody messed with my father. He was a 4th degree black belt. I mean, the man was a serious walking weapon. So then to go from being protected to now I'm the one that's having to protect my mother was like, wow, okay. I'm a lover. I'm not a fighter. So that led to sleepless nights. I had nightmares of my father in the hospital. I mean, I was a caregiver for him for the 1.5 years while he was battling cancer. And so visions of watching his face and the mortality, like when you know somebody that you love and watching their face change as they're realizing that their days are numbered and they're going to die and they don't want to go and they have a lot to do. Those images would haunt me. So I couldn't sleep for quite a few years. Used to have severe nightmares. And that's why I believe so wholeheartedly in this University of Self-Realization, and why I give to Divine Bliss. I give my time and a portion of proceeds, and it's my why, because when it felt like there was no hope for my family, like in all totality, it felt at the time, that was a place that I could go that just felt safe, and I could regroup and I could process and I could heal. And so after I got everything in place and it was all calm and, I got the systems in place, I took 2 years where I only worked a day a week. The team handled the rest of it. I was mostly in a communal garden, learning the beauty of nature and connecting to vegetables. And I would only eat what I had grown in my garden. So, it's been through some hard times.
Fascinating. And, here you are 10 years later, making an even bigger impact, writing a new book. You've got so many fascinating stories of success. I'm curious, Amanda, so here you are 10 years later, knowing what you know now, what advice, if any, would you give Amanda 10 years ago?
The first thing that comes up to me, honestly, is don't do it. It's really hard. I mean, now it's wonderful and I'm very grateful and I get great opportunities that I never, I'm 10 years ahead of what majority of the people my age are normally experiencing, I would say, because of the opportunities that I've gotten. But the only person in my life that was saying, yes, absolutely, was my guru. She was like, it's part of your destiny. You can do it. Just step in. I'm like, step in. I write songs. I sing and do meditation. Like, there's no way. So I don't know if that's so inspiring. Don't do it. Run for the hills.
That's entrepreneurship, though. I mean, that's the truth. Like, that's the entrepreneur. I mean,
I have this freakish problem where I just love challenge, and I wish it wasn't so critically intense. Like, I decided on a drop of a hat to climb Kilimanjaro, which is the largest freestanding mountain in the world, 19,342 feet in the air. And I didn't train for it at all. So I have this problem. I should stop. I run towards the challenge. Everybody's running the other way. And I'm like, yeah, let's go for it. So I need to work on that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And thank you for taking us behind the scenes, right? And being vulnerable and sharing your journey. What are 1 to 3 action steps you hope our viewers or listeners take from our time?
I would think, hopefully it gave a little bit of a pause for you to think of maybe even your own path in life, like a little bit of mortality. I always like to bring up mortality because we don't talk about it. It's not really the sexy thing. I mean, people try to make it sexy, but I like to get real and raw about it because it's a reality. Nobody comes out of life alive, right?
That's right.
So that's number one, maybe a little shift in perspective there. Number 2, read chapter 4.
Yep.
No brainer. And then number 3, maybe I just hope maybe some nuggets of the market data make you think twice about, the kind of marketplace that we're living in, and make sense of why some things seem harder because trends are growing at such a rapid rate.
That's amazing. And I want to encourage you, as you're watching, as you're listening, take action with what Amanda's been sharing with you, right? Number 1, think about your journey, think about your path, right? Are you really doing it for you? Are you doing what you're called to do and not your mom or your dad or some friend or your employees or your team the list can go on and on, just depending. Cut the cord. What are you doing for you? What's your journey? Number 2, get chapter 4. And I'm going to go deeper. I'm going to say, get chapter 4, get the book, and go to howtodoublesales.com. Like right this second. Like, if you didn't do it already, what are you waiting for? We're crying out loud. Do it now. Go get the book. Okay. You can get chapter 4 too. Start with that maybe as your first step. And then the next thing is make sure you go check out what Amanda's doing, right? It's amazing. Her spirit, her joy, her lessons. There's so much wisdom that you can learn from Amanda and what they're doing. So go take action right now and apply everything she shared. She talked about market data. Lead with market data, not product or service data. Think of your core story. What can you do to develop an even stronger, more effective core story or core message, right? What can you do like today? And what's it costing you if you don't? She shared the story of Troy, $12 million in business when the average does $8 million in a year. And he did that in 2 weeks. Hypergrowth. If you want hypergrowth, apply. If you don't want hypergrowth and you just kind of want to stagger or even fall backwards or be one of the statistics of failing, well, I guess do nothing with this. But if you really want to get results, I challenge you, I encourage you, I give you a high five. Go for it. Take action with what Amanda's shared with you as a gift today. So Amanda, it's been great to have you here. Really, really grateful for the time. And I will take you up on your invitation as well. Wonderful. So take action. Take action with what she shared. Seize the day. Thanks for listening to this episode of growthtofreedom.com. Are you struggling to get a steady flow of new clients every day? Or maybe hit a plateau or hit a wall in growing your business? Well, let's help you solve this problem today. Let's review your business and have a conversation. You can do that for free today at breakthroughstrategycall.com. That's breakthroughstrategycall.com. In addition, if you're looking for a simple way to implement some of what we've been talking about in today's episode, then I want to encourage you to get our free small business toolkit. You can get that at activate.breakthrough3x.com. That's activate.breakthrough3x.com. If you'd like access to the special resources and all the show notes for this special episode, make sure to visit growthtofreedom.com.